Seltzer Time.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Seltzer Time podcast. It's your boy Ricky, aka Dick Chuck, aka the man behind the can at Seltzer Time Official. Here, as always, with my conversation accomplice, the man with the hunch about what's that, Travis.
What is crackin' Fizzle Fiends? Welcome back to another episode of the Seltzer Time podcast. And as per usual, we are stoked that you're here. We have taken a break from our weird-ass summertime schedule to bring you kind of a serious episode. There's some local shakeup happening in the beer industry, both nationally and here in our own city. And we had the opportunity to talk to Sarah Gibbons, a local service industry worker who is experiencing some of it for herself. And
yeah, she kind of just gives us her view on things that have happened, things that are currently happening, ideas for the future to make it a much more accepting and safe environment for all.
We asked her about what her perspective was about being a woman in the industry, in an industry that has a lot of chauvinistic tendencies.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you were looking for fart jokes, this may not be the episode for you, but if you're looking for a good conversation, may I introduce Sarah Gibbons. What is crackin' Fizzle Fiends? This week on the show, we are talking to Sarah Gibbons, local service industry worker. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, like we said, Sarah's worn a lot of hats in the service industry, so we thought it'd be appropriate to start there. How long have you worked in this field?
Specifically restaurants. I've worked in restaurants for close to 8 years, I would say. Started at the host stand, moved on to, some serving shifts, kind of did both for a while while I got used to serving. I kind of happened into the beer industry, and becoming a bartender in the beer industry, as well as bartending at other establishments, but that was kind of my focus for the majority of my service industry experience.
What interested you about beer? Sorry, Ricky.
I was going to ask you that question.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to know what made beer.
Yeah, so the first restaurant that I hosted at was actually like a microbrewery, so it was kind of more of like a restaurant that served beer, and I got to try some beer styles that I wouldn't have otherwise. That really intrigued me, that there was like all of this different world of beers that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. And then once I started serving and bartending more, I was able to talk with patrons and guests more. And you just get to know a lot of different types of people that you might not have otherwise had a common ground to talk about something, and then to, maybe dive into your lives a little bit and learn something about people that you wouldn't have otherwise. So it's the culture of the social aspect of it, as well as the exposure to different things.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I always find that interesting. I imagine you must feel similarly as to why you got into it, Ricky.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, outside of appreciating beer, it was more of it was like an easier way to like make friends and learn about different people. And I mean, that's how I met Sarah.
It really is. Yeah.
I feel like I've met most people that I currely know.
It was like a trade-off of you coming into Wormtown and me going into the dive.
Yeah. Like I would see you like most Wednesday nights. Like,
hey.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I like about this industry, though. I've never really worked in the service industry. I've only really, I did a pop-up for a minute, but not like you guys do. But the stories that I hear of the camaraderie and like the post-shift hangs, and like even restaurateurs that you think would be competing, heading together after the fact and hanging out and like making fun of each other.
I always describe it's not competition, it's community.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of other industries, it's like very much competition. Like, competing automobile garages or dealerships, or like, the like 2 different dollar stores down the street from each other, like stuff like that. Like that's competition. Whereas like the service industry, at the end of the day, we all know each other and like get along for the most part. But at the same time, that's where it can get, a little dicey.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like at least like the stuff that I saw, like, you get to know somebody from working at one restaurant or a brewery or a bar. And for the most part, most people work at multiple places, or like they've moved on to a bunch of different places. So you really do get to you get to know a person from somewhere, and then a couple months later, they're at a new place.
Right. And it, like, always, you're like, oh, what are you doing here? Like, funny to see it here. And but then it all just makes sense. Like,
oh, sure.
Well, of course you'd end up here. Because this person who was the manager over there is now a bartender over here. And so they hooked you up with this job over here now. It's like,
That's any industry. It's not
true.
what you know, it's who you know. And that's how you get opportunities.
That is true.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so much about what you're describing that sounds fantastic, that I can understand the people that make this a career as to why they would choose that path.
Yeah. And like, so where I was saying it gets a little dicey though, is like the perception of like how well you think you know someone versus how well you actually know someone. And, that post-shift hangs with like the alcohol involved. You might say things that are inappropriate, and then it kind of becomes what you feel is a rapport. And I don't think that there are a lot of people that feel super comfortable to say something when they feel like a line is crossed. So as much as it is a wonderful thing, it can be a dangerous thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I only worked in a restaurant for a very short time. I worked at a bar for a long time, which, I mean, they're not super different, but you go from kind of being, involved in those, not involved, but you kind of see some of the things that are happening like on the floor. And then when you're bartending at a place that's, more of a like post shift hang, you can see where the issues can show up for sure.
Yeah. And there are lines that are crossed that like don't feel all that bad when it's one person, but for whatever reason, if it's a different person, it's like you can just tell that their intention is different. And so there's not just this like clear line. It's not black and white. It's like this very blurred, like incredibly blurred line that you're like, did that person cross this line? Did they go too far? Do I report them? Like what do I do? Do I say nothing? Because then it'll just cause all this tension. If I say nothing, it probably maybe it won't happen again. It's just there's no protocol
definition.
Yeah, there's no clear definition.
Yeah, I think, speaking from my white male privilege, it's, understanding that, like you were saying, what one person says to you could be totally harmless, but there's another person who could say, not the same thing, but something that they perceive not to be crossing a line, but it's crossing a line because everybody's different. Everybody has their own like personal boundaries.
Right. So, yeah. Who you say it to and who says it are important factors in that equation. And like, there were definitely things that were said to me on and off the job that I'm like looking back at, and like at the time I was like, oh, haha, they were being funny. And now it's like, you know what? No, that was really not a cool thing to say.
Yeah.
With I'm not sure if I was quoted, but I was the one that said that someone said to me, like, doesn't it suck that I make more money than you?
That is in the article.
Yeah, that was said directly to my face. And it's this, it was a person that's considered like a jokester, like and then, looking back at it, even a week after that, I was still reflecting on it. And that's where, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So just for our listeners, just to kind of set the scene a little better, for anybody that isn't aware of what's going on, we aren't having Sarah on just because we think she's a kick-ass bartender and cool person. She is also involved in a litigious pursuit against a organization within the city, one of her former employees, about some inappropriate conduct that happened in the workplace. And there's already been some steps taken to correct it on their side. Whether or not that does enough is kind of up for debate, and not necessarily what we're trying to get into today. We thought we can talk about, or use this opportunity to talk about the industry at whole, talk about things that are going right, things that kind of suck, like some of the stuff we've just described, and figure out, where to go from here, I guess. As again, the service industry rookie, I'm going to kind of take a back seat in a lot of this conversation and just kind of ask the questions, but it's mostly some of that stuff you were describing. Like, to me, I've been in some situations, there's some jobs working with guys where once I got very comfortable with them, like the interpersonal relationship got very, like, whether or not you want to say clearly defined, like joking and teasing, and like to the point of, berating my sexuality, berating my manlyhood, berating, that all felt commonplace, which is, not necessarily a good thing, but in the situation it did. And at not one point did I feel offended by it. But again, if this was a random person or somebody I didn't know very well that would say what would be very hurtful things, I think I too would take immediate offense. You know what I mean? So I think you're right.
Right. And I think another thing is that you don't know who's listening.
Also true.
Which could make someone very, like, where you were said, like, I've definitely been in the situation where, like, essentially straight men are berating their own sexuality. And from my point of view, I understand where the culture lies and like the back and forth between men, but from the outside looking in, it's like, man, that like feels like you're making fun of gay people. You know what I mean? Like
100%. No, but you're so right, because it took me to actually pause. Truly, it took somebody else to point it out to me. They're like, what are you doing? Like, am I making fun of somebody for their choice? Am I making fun of a situation, or am I making light of the fact that, I come off so way that it would be funny for me to come? Does it matter? Like, do I really need to put somebody down to make myself be funny?
Right. Yeah. And there are a lot of laughs you'll get from situations like that. So it's easy to perpetuate that type of situation. And it's also easy for a woman in a workplace to just kind of laugh that stuff off, because that's just what we were conditioned to do. If we speak up, we're annoying and whiny, which is definitely how I've been made to feel about things that I've come forward for in the past.
That's wild.
Yeah, like the age old, like, let me think on this and I'll get back to you. That's like, that was just what I experienced over and over and over again. So I was like very much questioning myself as far as like, maybe I'm not actually working that hard. Maybe I don't deserve these things. And I think that's a general service industry thing. It's a popularity contest. So like, as much as like you do like all this hard work and like try to prove yourself, if they don't like you for whatever reason, like you literally could have like tripped on a customer's foot by accident and the customer wrote a bad review or something, and that's why they don't like you, like, then you're not going to get the promotion, or you're not going to get the raise, or you're not gonna, it's like just like menial stuff like that like you don't know what they're actually like judging you on.
Yeah.
And it's very choosy. Like, it's not, I really don't know like how I can prove myself in the service industry, if that makes sense.
So I think looking, I mean, I don't know. I really don't even know how to like phrase this, but there, like,
do your best.
Well, so when things started coming out on a much larger level, over the last couple of months, I started to think about like why I'm very much a brand loyalist, right?
Oh, I totally am too. I think that's like, small town stuff.
Yeah.
So it's been really hard for me trying to peel myself away from this identity that I created the past 3 or so years,
Yeah, but I mean, everybody like kind of like builds their identity into like what they're doing. And I, working at a craft beer bar and, really falling in love with beer, when you start seeing these things, it's like, no, nothing, you're not surprised at all. Like I know that beer has this horrible, like toxic masculinity aspect to it, but there's breweries that I genuinely love, and I love them because of like what they kind of like put out their beliefs from the beginning. And I remember every time like looking at Instagram and being like, I really hope that I can still feel that way. Like, after this Instagram swipe, like I really hope like this brewery that I love and that even if I don't know the people that work there, everybody kind of gives off the vibe that it is this like safe place that makes great beer. I really don't want to see them pop up on it. And personally,
it's tough because I think that like a lot of people want people to believe that about like, it's a little embarrassing, to be honest, to come out of the woodworks and be like, yeah, actually I was putting on a show. I wasn't happy that entire time.
No, totally. But I think that's what like speaks to what you like, the move that you made was you kind of like, it would have been easier to not say anything, but instead you like felt empowered and took the step to like make sure that you were heard. And
props to Brienne Allen, because it wouldn't have happened without her.
She is gangster.
Yeah, she's awesome. She is literally a hero.
She's the best. I mean, well, that's like one of the things, like touching back on that. I mean, I personally love Notch Brewing, and I'm not surprised that they've like stood behind her and really like, I mean, a million places, most places, if they had an employee that took that kind of step and put everything on blast, would have tried to shut it down as quick as possible, or, try to like let her go or move on from her or whatever, and not really like stood behind her. And there's a lot of other breweries.
Yeah, respect to them too, because that's dope.
Yeah. I guess like my question is like, do you think seeing breweries like Notch and I know like Allagash, like there's a bunch of breweries that kind of have come out like in support of Brienne. Do you think that there's hope that those types of places become more prominent and some of the places that kind of built this weird bro-y environment?
Yeah, I really do have like hope. And like I said before we started recording, the place that I'm working now, 4 Star Farms, the brewery at 4 Star Farms, they're a brand new business, and they have been incredibly supportive of what I need as far as, they're not like necessarily taking a stance on anything that I'm dealing with legally or whatever. Yeah. But they have just been supportive of like, they have made it very clear that if I need anything, that they're there. And I walked into work. I didn't even think about this. I walked into work the other day and Brienne posted that she's releasing Brave Noise, her beer for the cause of the Me Too movement in the brewing industry right now. She announced that she's releasing the recipe for collaboration upon request, or upon application, or what, I don't know. I think it's an application. I'm not sure. But I walked into work the other day and the head brewer said, "Hey, I'm brewing this beer. I'm going to submit to brew this beer. I want you to do it with me."
Hell yeah.
That's so awesome.
So it wasn't even something that I was like, are you gonna like think about maybe possibly potentially he said, "We're doing this and I want you to be a part of it."
That's so cool. That's the type of stuff that like you love. I mean, you should never have to get to that situation, but the fact that like where, I haven't had their beer yet from 4 Star, but
it's top notch. It's so good. It's
Yeah.
like really like he describes it really nice. He doesn't have a flagship beer, or they don't have a flagship beer. When I say he, I'm talking about the head brewer, who is also has part in the ownership, and he manages the front of the house at this point. He says that he doesn't have a flagship because he cares about and respects all of the time that he puts into creating each beer. And it really shows in the quality of every beer too. Like there's not a single beer I've had that I haven't liked from there. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just cool.
That's cool that he wants you to be a part of the like brewing process for that beer. Because you don't brew, right? Are you?
No, I've never even had an opportunity to do any of like the Pink Boots brewing days, because they typically happen at 9:00 in the morning on like a Friday, and I would just be working a double.
Yeah.
So like, brew for 2 hours and then come in and work 12 hours. Sounds great. No, I think I'm going to like sleep.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because I wanted to be a part of those things, but it just wasn't conducive to my schedule.
Yeah.
If I wanted to like have a clear mind for my actual shift of work.
Do you, so, I mean, like, obviously I know you haven't brewed that beer yet, but do you think that's like something you'd like to do even like past that beer? Do you think like,
to be honest, in the brewing industry, like I have thought about brewing, but there is this like just like niche of like brewery culture that like is very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not idealistic, but there's just a hierarchy of like what people think is good, and there's really no way to know what is actually good and what's not. And and it's that boys club mentality, like a chick can't brew a good beer or whatever, that type of thing that pushes me away from it, because I did an electrician apprenticeship and I was really excited about the work and I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, but the culture that I was in just like it was very short-lived. It was like 3 months I did this and I was I just can't be around these people. So
and if you're
I'm worried that it would. That's what people keep saying.
Well,
I'm like, I don't even want to find out.
I've seen it. I've seen these specifically white men with these like huge egos and low capabilities get threatened by a woman that comes on and does the job better. I've seen it moving. I've seen it in a print shop. I've seen it like, it's so embarrassing to me. Like, let's just really celebrate.
It was like that culture of like, let me get the ladder for you, oh, like, honey, let me open this door for you. I'm like, what do you like? I'm doing a job here. Get out of my way.
Yeah, I'll offer to open the door. It'd be
much faster if I just kept going and carried this ladder. You didn't try to like stop me and argue with me about you carrying the ladder for me. When it was like it was like the carpenters and the like mason workers that would. I'm like, this is not your job. Why do you care?
Yeah. It's so insane.
So that's kind of what swayed me away from like the back of the house in the brewing industry, which is a shame, because
I think it just needs more disruptions. I mean, what's happening right now is a disruption. It's a market disruption. It's enough people are fed up with the way the things have gone, and they're going to change it. And we need, as consumers, we recognize and we can vote with our dollar, and we support these companies that are doing the actual hard work and doing the thing that are recognition. And truth be told, like if some of these other companies can filter out the shit that they've done wrong and like own it and make it part of their history and make it part of their platform, like as a consumer, if you want to agree or feel like they've done their tenet, whatever, support them. But let's support the people that are actually doing the good.
Yeah, I was reading comments that were saying just like, I don't care how bad they are. If they brew good beer, I'm going to buy it. And then someone like responded saying, so you don't care if people are being harassed and mistreated in the workplace? And he said, nope, the beer is good. And it's just like super disheartening to see. But I mean, like, that's not the majority.
No, yeah.
It's, it's
but
that like,
exist.
Yeah, they exist, and it's like that's why you don't read the comments, because those are the people that comment.
Yeah,
But
exactly. The comment section is the grossest section. Is this the grossest
I like
thing on
really,
any...
really like punish myself by looking at that stuff because it's entertaining, but it's also really, really
It's bad.
painful.
Yeah.
So it's just I don't know. I've tried my best to stay away from the comment section with all of this.
So before we talked a little bit about like some of the reasons you stuck in the bad situation for so long. And like, I know that's something that you've heard asked time and time again. I'm sure it was in that comment section that you were just referring to. As somebody that worked a job, by no means was it in a situation like that, but it was in a situation that I didn't like the way I was, like the person I was becoming or the situation. Like it took me 9 years to exit and it wasn't even that bad. So I can appreciate that, like you get comfortable with something, but you know, kind of take us through it. You know, what were some of the reasons that you didn't just jump ship at the first?
You know, there were always promises of growth within the company. There was the camaraderie, the friendship of the people that I worked alongside. You know, we would get like little bonuses and Christmas presents and stuff like that. So, you know, it was kind of this little like gaslighting thing that we were subjected to that was like, we treat you really well because here's a nice Christmas present. But no raise for you, even though you've worked here for 3 years. But it was these little things that I was like, yeah, well, they do this and they donate to charities and like it was easier to stay, and I wasn't necessarily in the financial position to leave. And luckily when I left, it was not an easy decision by any means. It was a late night crying session with my mother, if I'm being honest. Where my mom was like, you can't do this. Like, you have to quit. And that wasn't the first time that I had a meltdown like that. I literally August of last year, I sought out therapy, and I was like, it's just my mental health. I'll get through it, you know, like again and again, like putting it on myself for like being a negative employee, like disgruntled or, you know, just like, or like, you know, like I'm depressed and like have anxiety, which are, you know, I have gone through those phases, but they were definitely like triggered by a toxic environment. And so it was the back and forth of like, well, I can get through it. It'll get better. And like being told over and over again that it'll get better too. So it was just this like ongoing promise of hope being dangled in front of me.
Yeah, the little carrot keeping you going.
Exactly.
I can appreciate that though. And then again, you said financially, like we get into these situations where our employment becomes part of our personality. So to change that is a stressful thing to do. I know some people don't mind applying for jobs and changing jobs at their whim, but most people like just having a habit and like just knowing what to expect. Right.
And like, especially in the service industry, like that transition between jobs, like it's long. Like when you're like actually like making money, it takes a little bit. So like, unless you have like a little stash saved, like it's not an easy transition. You're gonna be slumming it for a month, which, you know, kind of sounds like not that much time, but it's tough. And I luckily I had already accepted this other job. I'm only there 2 days a week, but it's sustaining me in the interim while I figure out what I want to do. As far as, do I want to stay in the service industry? Do I want to, what do I want to do, really?
Sure.
And I know I'm not the only one having this internal argument or discussion with myself in the industry right now. So, or ever really, but right now it's more apparent and more prominent.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine. I can't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to. I can't even like wrap my head around what that must be like going through, like all the personal stuff, and then through last year of COVID, which is I'm sure was a wild time to work in the industry, and then to kind of like get into like this first half of this year, which I'm sure was a wild time in the industry, and now it's like, is this something I need in my life? Like,
right, like
kind of a lot of stress.
What's the end goal here?
Yeah.
Yeah. COVID was pretty wacky. It definitely set me in like a spiral of really questioning just what I was doing at all.
Yeah.
When I was unemployed for those few months that nobody was working really, my sleep schedule was ass backwards. Like I was waking up at 8 a.m. and going to sleep at 5 p.m.
That's like, so wild.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Waking up at like, hold on. I'm confused here. Waking up at 8 a.m. is normal. It was backwards. Waking up at 5 p.m. and going to sleep at 8 a.m. I was like, I know I have this wrong. What am I doing? That's how I felt that entire time, though. What's happening? What time is it?
No, it was weird. You said something else that kind of stuck with me is the people didn't know that you were having a bad time kind of deal. Like in a job that is so tied to how you treat somebody, kind of shielding the way you're really feeling, even in the moment, let alone long term. Like I imagine that just becomes secondary.
Yeah, or
second nature rather.
Right. Second nature. Yeah, for sure. It's like that mentality of like, don't bring it to work with you. And it's like, even if it lives at work, like you can't bring it out onto the floor with you. And, my mom, during that crying session where I finally decided it was time to cut ties, she said to me, like, I remember a time where you were like so happy you couldn't picture yourself anywhere else. And I straight up said, and I didn't, this was not premeditated. It literally just like came out of my mouth like I was vomiting. I was like, Mom, I was lying.
Oh, that sucks.
And like hearing those words coming out of my mouth in that context was like, whoa, hold on. Like, that was like a reflex for me.
Yeah. You had to like tell yourself how you feel.
Or even remind yourself that you were. Yeah.
It's like that like moment of clarity in therapy. If you've ever had
That's
one
what
of
it
those.
Sounds like. Yeah. It's the epiphany moment. Like, oh shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, wait, wow. Yes, I am quitting.
Well, if people want to read up, they can go find the articles. But I'm more curious, like Ricky was asking, you're not sure as to what's next, but what's next? Like, how do we fix this in the industry? Do you have ideas?
Yeah. I mean, as far as like what people are doing right, I definitely think that Redemption Rock is like a very solid example of what you should be doing. And no one's perfect, and I've talked to Danny over there, and she like said that to me, and she kind of said like, I don't understand why this is so hard to just like do that. And it's like, you know what, me either, but it is apparently. So like we got to figure out how to make it not hard. And like they do like a blind hiring process, which is amazing. Something that was lacking in basically all of my service industry jobs was an HR department. That was huge, working in a company with 50 plus employees. It's like, and not ever knowing who to go to, even for schedule changes, but like for like issues like what I was having, it was debilitating.
That's wild. I mean, sorry to cut you off. The HR thing it's such a good point, especially what?
Keep going. Well, I have my own problems with HR, and we can talk about that.
Well, everybody has issues.
Great. Well, HR is like, so one thing that I think that, the company I was with is doing right is they've hired an internal and external HR company. And I think that is huge. And I don't know, I'm not working there anymore, so I don't know how that's going. But I kind of thought to myself, that sounds smart, because internal HR can be swayed in certain ways as far as politics, whereas external HR, you're not dealing with people on a day-to-day. You don't have like this personal, like, you know, popularity contest with anybody. It's just you do the administrative, like, these are the policies, this is what we need to follow. So I think having both of those things is important for a company that's growing. You know, of course, like, that's, I don't know what it costs, but I'm sure it's expensive.
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
But it can save you a lot of money too.
Well, so my issue with HR, just people forget that HR is still employed by the company. So HR's role is more to protect the company from incident than it is to protect the employees.
Totally.
It's just, unfortunately, that is what it is at the end of the day.
Right. But it is.
So there's other pathways.
The one singular thing is, you know who to go to if there's an issue.
Exactly.
And that, whether or not they're working for you or against you, it's just like, it's still like, all right, well, I had this issue. I don't know who to tell. So like, I'm just not going to tell anyone.
And that's an issue. Agreed. That's not good.
Yeah. So, you know, and people are humans, like they have feelings no matter what they're employed to do, or they have feelings and they have opinions and they have, you know, stances, and no matter what they're employed to do. And so you're never going to be able to control it. There's never going to be a perfect way to deal with that, but there are tactics that we can use. And I think that is a first step, just knowing who you can go to so
my question was more
address an issue.
Agreed. My question was more of like, do you ever see the potential of a unionization within the industry? Because that's typically what happens, is the unions come together, and it's the unions that protect the employees' right versus the HR and the corporations and that kind of deal. I don't ever see it happen.
I don't know much about unionizing, to be honest. I do know what you just said, is that a union is there to protect the employees. And with working that very short electrician apprenticeship, I know that there are people that are very against unions because it protects people that maybe don't necessarily deserve it. So I don't know what my stance is on unions, first of all. Second of all, I don't really know if that's like, because most breweries at this point are really small. So I don't know if that's feasible.
It was just something I thought.
Yeah. I definitely think it's like it's definitely food for thought, and something that like should be talked about as far as making a change. My phone is falling over here. Sorry.
Nah, you're chill. We could kind of end it here. What's one thing immediately you'd like to see change in the industry? Like tomorrow morning, wake up and you no longer see X.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I've like been so consumed with like everything happening that it's hard to say. I guess I don't know if I have an answer for that question. I guess mostly I would just like to see accountability. Like if tomorrow I woke up and I saw an email from someone that has wronged me or whoever and said, I'm sorry, and I'm going to try my best to make sure this doesn't happen again.
You still haven't received that?
No, you can't. Like, I don't know, lawyers and stuff.
Well,
like,
what you apologize, it's admission of guilt.
No, that's a good point. Sorry, I didn't even.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I really, you know, I've had like a couple people reach out and say like, I'm sorry I didn't do anything in the time, but it was just kind of like you know, it was nice to see those, but it weren't coming from the people that I needed to see it from.
Yeah. No, totally.
And so there's really, accountability is huge. And like, that's what's going to make change happen, is for other people to see that like, hey, it can really be a good thing for you to admit that you were wrong.
Agreed.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for letting me. I really encourage people to ask questions, because it should be a conversation. It shouldn't be a narrative. It should be an ongoing conversation. So that's why I wanted to do this.
Hell yeah. where can people find you to ask questions?
I'm Sriracha USA on Instagram. I am private, so I will have to.
You have one of the best Instagram handles ever.
I'm waiting to make money off of it. I want Sriracha to pay me for my
I was
handle.
gonna ask, like, how have they not hit you up and been like, we did this? Like, what?
I don't know. I've had it for like 10 years and nothing.
Awesome.
I've gotten like accidentally tagged a couple times when I wasn't private. But yeah, so either Sriracha USA on Instagram or my email is iamsarahgibbons@gmail.com. So Sarah with an H, SARAHGIBBONS.
Fantastic. We'll also have it down in the show notes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Well,
Cool.
thank you very much, Sarah. We'll
Yes.
hope to see you out and about. Maybe we'll take the 40-minute drive out to your new spot.
Yeah, it's longer than 40 minutes.
You
But
said it's an hour, you said?
it's like an hour and 10 minutes.
Worth it.
It's so freaking worth it. Every time I go there, like, we want to make sure that it's like, worth it for like you're making enough money to make it worth it. You come out here, I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, it's just worth the mental health. But yeah, no, it's awesome. And Dead Horse is doing the food truck down there, so the food's freaking
Oh, hell yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
We'll take a little trip. Are you there on the weekends? Is that what you're saying?
Fridays and Saturdays consistently.
Okay.
So
Sick.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll have to take a venture.
Let's do it.
Sounds good. I'll be there.
Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, so like we said at the beginning, this was definitely a more serious episode for us, but an important one. I think there's no reason why this conversation shouldn't be happening, on more platforms and more, wider audiences and stuff. It's something that hopefully this conversation doesn't just die down once there was a lot of attention brought on the beer world a couple of months ago. And I just hope that continues to be a main focus, is that things need to change. And it's not like, oh, this is like a hot topic for 2 weeks and that's it. So,
I mean, you're describing the news cycle, and that's the unfortunate side effect of having all the media. But to your point, I do agree that this is something that needs to be continued to talk about. This is stuff that we need to change in every industry as we continue marching towards a full equality, civilization and culture. Like shit like this needs to go away, where it doesn't matter. Like we said, Redemption Rock is doing it perfectly because their applications don't have gender, don't have ethnicity. Literally no identifiers are on the resume. It's strictly what you've done, what you're capable of doing, and whether or not you're a good candidate for this position. And the more we get to that type of situation, the better.
couldn't agree more.
I'm now also recognizing that there's some other sides to this. We need to correct some access. We need to make sure that we're getting people of all backgrounds to the same level of candidacy, that some people have opportunities. You brought it up before. This is my white privilege that I'm recognizing.
Totally.
But it's through these conversations. It's through learning. It's through, calling shit what it is and figuring out ways to move forward.
Yeah, I really noticed when Sarah mentioned how, it's not a black and white issue in terms of like the comments that cross the line. Like what crosses the line for you might not cross the line for me. But it's, if what you say if that crosses my line, that's an issue. Like, and there's certain things across the board everybody knows, like don't say these things, don't do these things, there's no place for that. And then there's other things where it's kind of Sarah even said like, what if one person I'm out with says something to me and then this other person says it, and you can just tell their intentions aren't the same. And it's not about like what the person who said it intended it by, it's about the way it was interpreted by the person it was directed towards. That's the problem. And it's like, just kind of pay attention to what you're saying and focus a little bit more on like how people are taking that. Yeah,
agreed. And it's like, to be clear, we're not talking about just being politically correct here. Excuse me one second.
No worries.
Let me say a little quietly. We're not talking about being politically correct here. Like that's its own kind of bullshit. I listened to this really interesting article on NPR about that. We're talking about talking to people with the same respect that you would talk to any other person. Yeah. Treating people in the service industry with respect, treating people in every industry, like as people, as fucking human beings.
Yeah. And I mean, leading back into the thing on management, if somebody has a complaint about something, like you need to take it seriously. It's important.
Agreed. So
yeah.
I'm very sorry that Sarah had to go through what she's going through, but as somebody that really has no other way to like help this issue, I appreciate that she found the courage in herself, and everybody that is currently going through these types of situations found the courage in themselves to say something, to speak out, and to begin the process.
Yeah, super badass. Make it a better place for the next. I feel like saying the next generation is like a weird thing to say here, but like the next person to take that job or whatever, like just make it a better place for everybody to be a part of.
But that's what you're talking about. You're talking about fixing an industry, fixing a culture. And if we can't all get on that same boat, like, then fuck off.
Exactly.
Well, there it is. There's the knuckle dragger comment of the episode. It had to sneak its way in. And if you want to find more, you could find us at seltzertime.com or find me at Hunchback Travis on the interwebs.
You can find me at DickChuck77 or Seltzer Time Official. We're on everything. Even though I've been slowing it down on the Instagram recently.
Again, it's the summer vibes. We're enjoying the first summer back where we can actually talk to human beings. It's been a weird year. So
it has been very weird. And it's been a very wild. I feel like it's been an extremely busy couple of months. So
it's gonna get worse. 5 weeks till Powwow Worcester.
That's so insane. I can't believe it's 5 weeks away.
See you next week, peeps.
Bye guys.